This video is for information purposes only and does not constitute or form part of any offer or invitation for sale or subscription of or solicitation or invitation of any offer to or recommendation to buy or subscribe for any securities. Any person wishing to subscribe for and / or acquire any securities in Kin Global Limited will need to make an application in the manner set out in the offer document dated April 14th, 2026, registered by the SGXST, acting on behalf of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. You are responsible for your own investment choices. A copy of the offer document is available on the SGXST's website, https://www.sgx.com. Copies of the offer document and the application forms may also be obtained on request, subject to availability during office hours from SAC Capital Private Limited at 1 Robinson Road, number 21-01 AIA Tower, Singapore 048542. Please refer also to the disclaimers at the start of the video for more information.
In the first 9 months of 2024, you've had a revenue of 8 million. And then for the first 9 months of 2025, it surged to 56.5 million. Is this just an exceptional kind of gain?
It's really attributed to us starting the design and build vertical, and has proven that that strategy worked, right? Then with the design and build pillar in place, actually we are always looking out for hires to actually expand the design and build department in view that because there is more design and build project out there, right, that we can capture.
Most people will look like, 9 to 50 something. Too good to be true.
Then next year 180.
Why? Yeah, can you help us understand how did you manage to 5x in just 1 year?
My concern is, Singapore got how many places for you to keep building?
Yeah.
That's my bigger concern.
Especially.
Welcome back to another episode of IPO Circle with Chills with TFC. Awesome. Yeah. We were talking about this in the previous episodes. We hope to do more of this thing, right? So yeah, your wishes are granted and our wishes are heard. So I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut. And before we introduce you, the company and the CEO behind it, let's go one round just to introduce all of us for you that is new to us.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I'm a co-host here at TFC. And
Not the favourite co-host.
Not the favourite. Later I say already people jealous.
Yeah, jealous.
So only a co-host? Yes.
Maybe a bit of lead. We are exploring doing something.
Yes,
right,
we are.
between us. So yes. So you will see that coming. So hey, see, not very unhappy. yeah. Come, go.
Hi, my name is Dawn, known online as SG Budget Babe and author of Take Back Control of Your Money and TFC's by default favourite financial co-host.
Everyone, thank you, love it. Yes, you are my favourite. Yes, yeah.
My name is Christopher Ng. I'm a blogger and a YouTuber for a channel known as Growing Your Tree of Prosperity. And I'm the sniper of the team. So.
Awesome. I love that. Yes.
I gotta watch out for this guy.
Yes.
He's the
you
toughest
should.
one. His questions are the toughest. So yes, and today we are joined with the CEO of Kin Global, Vincent, and their company will be going for listing on the 23rd of April. So yes, Vincent, for our audience that don't know you yet, can you introduce yourself?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the Financial Coconut, for having me here today. My name is Vincent. I'm the CEO of Kin Global. We'll be going for our IPO on the 23rd of April.
To kick us off, we can introduce us, a little bit about the company. What do you guys do, and maybe also a little bit more about yourself.
So Kin Global is actually the restructured company that's going to be the holding company for our IPO. But actually, Kin Production was a company that was started back in 2017, and Kin Production started in Singapore, delivering very major sports events like HSBC Rugby Sevens, World Aquatic Championship.
That's the most major event in recent times. Yeah, and that accounts for your revenue. And later we'll let you know.
Okay,
Yes.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. And maybe a little bit about yourself. How do you
Your
end up?
background.
Yeah, your background. How do you do this? How do you end up here?
So Kin was started by myself and three other co-founders. That's my chairman, Mr. Koh Chiwa, and then Clement Tan, my chief operating officer, and Adrian Tan, my chief commercial officer back in 2017. But we didn't start the relationship back in 2017. We actually started our relationship a long time ago, since 2010. At that point in time, we were actually working for a company called City Neon. It's actually a SGX listed company as well. Yeah, so we were the sports division within City Neon. Yeah, in those days, we, under the guise of a Lisco, right, which is, a lot bigger, we had the chance to actually deliver very major scale event. So if I can quote you a few examples, right, there's a 2010 Youth Olympic Games in Singapore. Yeah, we've done a good job. And at the invitation of the Nanjing government, myself and Clement went up to Nanjing for 2 years. We helped the Nanjing government with the delivery of the Asian Youth Games in Nanjing, followed by the Nanjing Youth Olympic in 2014. And then subsequently, we flew back in 2015. Again, we helped Singapore with the 2015 SEA Games. Before then, at the invitation of the KL government, went up to KL to do the KL SEA Games in KL. That's back in 2017. So having done that, right, and acquire all the knowledge, we felt that maybe perhaps it's time.
We can do ourselves.
Yeah.
I think we know it. Yeah. We can leave a giant to build a giant. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of like that. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah.
I know, young and rash.
Definitely young, but not rash. Yeah, we were quite clear what we wanted to do with our life. Yeah, and sports is definitely in the DNA that, the three of us have. Yeah, so we decided to start Kin in 2017. But of course, as a small company, you don't get to deliver such mega projects, right? So we started with the smaller local sports event at the very initial onset. And then what was interesting then is that we found out that actually there was a very big momentum, right? A lot of tailwind from the government to actually want to posture Singapore as a global destination for sports tourism. Yeah, it's very important because when you have a sports event coming to Singapore, right, what you don't see, which is actually very valuable, is all the millions of viewers around the world when the event is broadcast. Yeah. So when they do a sports event in Singapore, it's as good as, you have a marketing budget, right, that you try to posture Singapore and let the whole world see Singapore. It's advertisement, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that strategy worked, and then there was a continuation of trying very hard to actually win the whole city contract to bring like major international sports event to Singapore. And sports event has got this very events in general. Events, right? If I say that this event is going to happen on the 10th of July, 10th of July, it must happen. It's not like us, it's one take, no reset. It has to go on, it has to go on. So when you deliver an event like this, right, it is very critical that the client, in this case, right, perhaps the sports agency or the international federation, choose a partner, right, that has the ability to ensure that the event can be delivered successfully at one take. Yeah. Not 2 takes, not...
Cannot too early. Cannot late, but also cannot too early.
He just swan us,
You got it,
He just swan us. You don't do so many takes before you roll. We one take, one hit. Bao jiao one. Oh my goodness.
No, that's not the reason.
Okay. So yeah, that's all the formalities. Since you swan us, we got...
I'll take out the machine gun.
We're going to start this thing. So welcome to IPO Circle. We have read your prospectus. We have a lot of questions for you. And if you have any other questions that you think we have not answered, you can put it in the comment section, right?
And if you're someone who never going to read the prospectus, I think this episode will be very useful for you as you try and figure out what you should make of it. Should you believe their words or ours or both? And make your decisions.
I thought you were going with we read the prospectus, so you don't need to.
Yeah, that's also the truth.
Please read.
But you should still read the prospectus.
Decision wisely. Yes. So anybody want to start? Take a
I'll
jet
start.
at Vincent. Yes.
I will start. The sniper will start.
Yes.
He told you had to watch out for this guy.
So there are about 3 issues that we found in the prospectus that I think that the investment public would like more visibility, more transparency. The first is the issue of customer concentration. In 2025, 3/4 of your revenue came from one customer marked customer A on page 50 of your prospectus. Would you cast some light, right, on, at least for the investors who are concerned about customer concentration, whether this is going to be an issue moving forward?
Okay, I think in the first place, right, sometimes there is a bit of overemphasis and a bit of overemphasis, right? When a company has got customer concentration, they think there is an issue. But if you look at TSMC, right, TSMC majority, the biggest customer is actually Apple, right? Yeah, without Apple, then TSMC will be, no longer viable. But do you then invest in TSMC? I do. I don't know about you. Yeah, it actually goes to show one important thing is that, if the customer can believe you, right, to deliver a project, yeah, that's more important than whether the concentration is down there. But I also can explain to you in the perhaps a bit deeper terms, right? It's actually back in end 2023, we decided that the sports event industry that we're operating in is getting, it's sizable, it's good for us, yeah, but we felt that we cannot just be content, right, operating only in the sports event delivery industry. So there's a strategic pivot. In 2023, we decided to go into a design and build vertical. But this please don't brand us together as design and build, as interior design and anything like that. Yeah, we are not like that. We're very specific when we say design and build. We are design and builders of event tourism experiences. That means you're looking at things like museum, gallery, and theme park. Yeah, so that's actually our focus, and also sports infrastructure as well. Yeah. So basically, because of that vertical being started in 2023, right? So you can see we are starting to get result in 2024, moving into 2025. So the D&B vertical will continue to grow. Yeah, and then as we diversify and look for more customers within the D&B space, right? Be it museum, gallery, or theme park, you can see the concentration will no longer be there under one customer.
Sorry, so just to explore that a bit further, right? It's about design and build, yes, but not only sports events, it's a bit broader as well.
Yeah, specifically in the more event tourism, attraction, infrastructure.
Why that niche?
Because the entire pivot for us post-IPO is really to go into event tourism. We think we have a very big role to play. We have successfully delivered a lot of international sports events in Singapore. And then a lot of people, when they look at sports event, right, they think that it's just an event, people buy ticket to go down. Actually, it's not true. I mentioned a bit earlier, right, because of the broadcast, a lot of people are actually looking at Singapore. But also, actually, a lot of people are traveling into Singapore. So when we do, for example, like World Table Tennis Singapore Smash, that was concluded in February, just a month or two ago, right? The room nights that we take out is easily like 3,000 or 4,000 room nights. Because the players, right, and the officials that come to Singapore, they actually stay for an extended period of 14 days. So multiply that by, like maybe 300 or 400 players, right? Then there's a big translation.
Help us understand a little bit more on the customer concentration as well for viewers who are concerned, because usually when they see this in the prospectus, they will be asking, what if you lose that customer? But from what you're describing, it also sounds like because these sports events, some of the ones that you guys have been doing are pretty major. So a lot of resources, like you say, it's a one take. You don't get to multiple takes and then post edit. You have to one take, right? So I would imagine a lot of resources are delivered and directed to making sure that one is a success. And that's why the revenue concentration is so high. Is that correct? And then what are the plans if, let's say, you guys have been projecting for a certain sports event in, let's say, next year to happen. But then maybe because hopefully not, we get another COVID-style lockdown or some sorts, and the event, for unfortunate reasons, has to be cancelled. What would then be the plan to get a replacement event so that drop in revenue will not happen for investors?
Yeah, maybe I also want to add on that, right? So because your answer to Chris's question is, you see Apple and TSMC, right? But they are a manufacturer relationship, right? So as long as Apple keeps selling, TSMC will keep, kind of like providing, right? But we all know, of course, the best is you have like a yearly tennis event or a yearly something, like national, like global one, right?
Those guaranteed to always happen.
Every year also have on that would be amazing, right? But based on the lined up of the kind of customers, and I don't know, because it's not said, but the question would then be, how do you continue this, building relationship that you can keep generating the next event with the same customer pool? Because also part of your risk factors, you did talk about sports events is not like always will have, so I think all these, they do share with us some light.
Okay, so we have read a lot of prospectus, right?
We read the whole thing,
That's why we are called IPO circle.
I mean, a lot of other
Yes,
prospectors,
yes.
I think risk disclosure is very important. Yeah, because we need to let the investing public know that, nothing is guaranteed, right? While the business will always try very hard to make sure that they continue to deliver, but we need to let the investors have the caveats so that they are not, it's properly disclosed. In
They
short,
need to be
right?
notified.
Yeah, they need to be notified, yeah.
That's
So
a legal term.
Yeah. So I want to maybe debunk some of the things that we were saying about, events being once-off. Actually, it's not true, because if you look at what the Singapore government has been trying to do, right, and the sports agency in Singapore is trying to do, is we are always trying to build a calendar of sports events. So motorsports F1 is one of them, right? It's always happening in September. And then we know that in February, right? Well, it's not always in February, but February, March period, right, will be the Singapore Smash. It has been here for the last 5 years already. And the very famous Singapore Marathon. There's also on the calendar every year. Yeah, so you can see actually as the calendar starts to build, right, then the recurring nature of the revenue will also start to increase. But we are not content with that. We know that we have a good chance of securing this recurring revenue. And sometimes some of these projects, we actually have multi-year contract with them. F1 is one of them. We're actually in the midst of signing another long-term contract for one of the sports events, but because it's not signed, so I was told not to say anything. Yeah, we are also moving into something that is very exciting. And this is actually our post-IPO movement, right? It's actually to create sports IP and to license more sports events, right, into Singapore. So one of the things, this one I can announce. Yeah. So, now everybody like to TikTok, right? Pickleball. Yeah. So actually doing a professional tournament. This is actually in collaboration with Professional Pickleball Association. We're going to do a Singapore Open. The tagline of that is called Where the Amateurs Play with the Pros. Yeah, so we have about 100 to 150 pro players coming to Singapore. And then we have about 350 to 400 amateur players that will be playing against them. So it's a very high level pickleball tournament. A lot of the pickleball movement that you see right now, right, is very community. Yeah, it's very I mean, I'm not saying that they are bad players. They're actually very good players. But what we are trying to do is actually to professionalize, the event. Yeah, then along that track, right, we actually have plans to bring in a few other IP. So when those are in place, right, they will give us even more certainty to our revenue.
But that brings up a question, because you did say that there are several events happening at different times of the year. Then why is it that your revenue concentration is still that high and not like spread out? Maybe why are we not seeing, say, 20% across 5 customers? Q1 is always this, Q2. So why is it that high? Help the listeners understand a little bit more.
My fear of this type of business is you experience margin compression over time, right? Like organizing, it's not wrong that sports event this day must go on, right? There's no you can't drag, because all the broadcast rights are sold and all that, right? So must happen. Okay, so that is absolute truth. And in other words, means there's a risk premium price to the event managing partners, right? So you can only work with a few people that have very good records, right? Usually that's how the game works. But over time, my concern of the business is that it's a tender process. You see margin compression over time when there are other providers that come into the game. So when I read the prospectus, I'm also pretty excited to hear more about this IP development, right? Because to me, that is like your gateway out of this problem, right? Where it's like, okay, we are quite good at running this thing. We got a good track record, we got good contracts, but what if somebody else like us, Xiao Xiao, come out and do like us 8 years ago, right?
He will say you need more than one take, so you won't go to
It's
you.
like, okay, never mind. Then I'm
But
very
these are all public tenders,
Yeah,
right?
it's all
So
public- yeah.
it's a bit of a price game as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm concerned about it. As much as you have gained your success, right, to get to where you are, I am concerned about this. But when I read it, then I was like, okay, you want to do the IP game. I understand, because if you look at some of the huge IPs out there, right, there is a lot of upside in how you monetize. Whether is it the wrestling one, the people fly around and push the barbell one, like all these IPs are amazing, the kind of
Hundreds
thing.
of millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's those are giant businesses, right? So I wanted to definitely hear more about how you plan to develop these IPs, and I mean even the one that you were talking about, which is Singapore open for the pickleball one, right? Do you actually own the whole IP? Like, how is this thing gonna run? And then the commercial, realities of this game. Would love to hear some of that. Yeah.
Okay, so when I mentioned the pickleball one, technically we don't call it an IP. It's more like a license, right? Because you license for 3 years and then you get to deliver the event for 3 years and then you start to build on that. But if the license work, right? So for example, HSBC Rugby Sevens is a license. SGP, right, or Singapore F1 is also a license. Every time they will announce that, Singapore just won another 5 years to do the event. But if the IP is good, right, then there is actually very high chance that it's going to come back even after the 5 years season. Look at F1. F1 has been around for more than a decade, and consistently it's been generating a lot of revenue. So when it comes to pickleball, same thing, is license as well, it's not IP. But moving along that line, right, it's not difficult for us to create IPs. Yeah, we still can create an IP that is owned by us, and there's intention for us to do it. We'll use Singapore as an incubator to create the IP, subsequently then export the IP to the rest of the region.
Actually, the second point you've answered partially. Okay, I think in the first 9 months of 2024, you've had a revenue of 8 million. And then for the first 9 months of 2025, it surged to 56.5 million, right? So the question I think a lot of investors want to know, is this a one-off? Is this just an exceptional kind of gain? Or we can expect, what would this normalized earnings run rate look like? That means moving forward, right? Is it going to be higher than 56.5 million, or it's going to dip slightly somewhere in between? So maybe you can help give us
that
some
will help your models,
transparency.
Right? Put into your numbers. So yes.
Okay, I think I partially answered it earlier.
Yes,
as
a little
correctly
bit.
mentioned,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Let me see once more.
Okay. So again, right, I want to point out to you that it's really attributed to us starting the design and build vertical, and has proven that strategy worked, right? That's why we are actually having that sudden
ramp
growth.
up.
Correct. Then with the design and build pillar in place, actually we are always looking out for hires to actually expand the design and build department, in view that because there is more design and build project out there, right, that we can capture.
So it's not a blip.
It's not a blip.
Essentially, it's not a
Okay,
blip.
very
Just
good.
in terms of proving that design
Yeah.
and build concept out, right? How many contracts was that? Was it just one big project that led to that revenue, or was it, I've proven myself over 10 small contracts, I'm gaining a reputation? Give us a bit of a flavor about how you have built
So
that
basically,
vertical.
there is a couple of design and build. I think there's about 3 or 4. A very significant portion of the DMB revenue, right, also come from permanent experience that we have designed and built, again, in a Singapore museum, because I cannot mention. Yeah. So if you look at the museum and gallery business, right, it is also very interesting, because museum and gallery business is, you don't get a lot of players down there. Yeah. It's not easy to design and build a gallery. The experience is there for a good 5 years or 6 years, right? So whatever you put in there must be pristine. Singaporean has very expensive taste. So sometimes experience that we do, right, must be, of international standard. If not, then people see already, we are
trying to sell to foreigners, right? The tourism thing,
Correct.
right? So your quality must be there. Yes.
Yeah, so the quality must be there. So having said that, right, you don't see a lot of players down there, which means that the chance of landing a project is actually higher because lesser competition. But if you look at museum, gallery, and theme parks, right, just as a whole, I want to emphasize, right, it's always in the tourism experience sector. We are not like interior designer and stuff like that. It's very important to distinguish. You look at the space itself, right? Do you think that there is more or less museum and gallery in Singapore now versus 5 years ago? It's more, right? Yeah. And then it will continue to grow as well, meaning that there will be more project opportunities out there. So what's the unique thing about museum and gallery, right, is after 5 years, you go again, this sounds boring already.
You have
want
to change the experience.
Correct. So it's very funny. Then you have more and more museum and gallery, and then you have more refreshment, right? So then the opportunity will actually increase as well.
But that jump, right, I think for viewers and people who don't read the prospectus, which unfortunately is a lot of people these days.
That's why we do the podcast.
Yeah, that's why this podcast exists.
It's okay. Mail to, you can listen.
Can you tell them
Okay?
the story from your point of view so they can better appreciate? Because most people will look like, 9 to 50 something. Too good to be true.
Then next year, 180.
Yeah. Why? Yeah, can you help us understand how did you manage to 5x in just 1 year?
And maybe also I also want to add on that, right? Because you said that it's the built environment, right? Okay, you built the facility, and that's the big part of the revenue, lah, right? In that growth, but that business has a narrow margin, in terms of the built environment business, even smaller than the events management business. That is my understanding of how this business work. Okay, but it's okay. That doesn't matter, right? I mean, if you can grow the revenue, you continue to develop the business and it grows in tandem, well and good. So that's not my concern. My concern is Singapore got how many places for you to keep building?
Yeah.
That's my bigger concern.
Especially in the last 5 to 6 years.
Yeah. And this type of thing, and I hope you can give us some color, because this type of projects, right, they tender much earlier. So you probably already know your kind of deal flow to come, right? Other than the museum galleries, like the main bulk of your business, which is all these sports, build environment for sports. If you can give us some color on the deal flow, that would be very helpful.
Maybe debunk a little. I think there's plenty of land in Singapore. Yeah, we are always reclaiming, right? Settling the land for maybe 5 years. Then when the land is settled, right, then we'll build something over it. Like, Marina Golf Course has been taken back, right? Because the land has been settled. Now it's ready for building. Another plot of land is actually at Gardens by the Bay down there. Now you have thermal coming out, right, which is a wellness experience. Now they're $1 billion. And then you have some residential coming out. You even have HDB blocks coming out. So plenty of land to be built. So whether the land are there, whether there are projects or not, there are projects. Singapore is going to build T5. T5 is a $30 billion project. MBS is spending another $6-7 billion for phase 2. RWS is also undergoing phase 2 right now. And then, of course, you have the Founders Memorial that, they closed the beautiful park, which I used to do my runs out there. Yeah, I was a bit upset. But
now got more jam.
Yeah. And then, of course, NS Square as well. So there's actually a lot of building works going on.
Okay.
Yeah, and also what is unique about Singapore is that, I don't know whether it's a good thing or not, we don't really have a lot of conserved buildings. Our buildings are always very pristine. Yeah, our attraction is always very pristine, right? When it gets old, we refresh it. Like Mandai is actually one example. Mandai just got through a revamp that's $1 billion. So there are plenty of opportunities out there. And moving forward, right, if you can just look at the wider picture, right? Like I would say the macroeconomy of Singapore, we are gearing up for a population of 10 million people. We are building Terminal 5, right, to move our transit passenger from 75 million up to 150 million. Actually, these are all the tailwinds, right? And it's clearly in sight. Yeah, I mean, it might be a bit murky for some, right? But for us, it's crystal clear. We know that a lot more will come to Singapore. And Singapore sometimes has a very unique position. Some say that we are opportunists, right? But I don't think so. I mean, when the events come to Singapore, they come for a reason, right? Because it's safe. Like World Aquatic Championship sadly had to come to Singapore because Russia decided to invade Ukraine, right? And it's no longer safe for them to do it in Russia. So we do have that safe haven type of mindset. And increasingly so, more and more sports events are coming down. More and more experiences are coming in. More and more tourists are coming in time to come. I know there's a slight dip this year, but tourism spend has actually gone up. So in view of that, right, just looking at the macro space moving forward and Kin's pivot into the event tourism space, right, I would say that there's plenty of growth opportunity. Yeah. The thing about us is that because events project is different from building project. Building project, you have order books because it will take you 5 years to build a building. But for us, right, when it comes to event projects, right, usually you have to deliver within the year itself. Yeah. So, it's kind of difficult to say that, I will tell you like next year got what. But I can tell you what are the events that are coming, right? Like in 2027 next year, KL SEA Games is going to happen. In 2029, Singapore SEA Games is going to happen. And among others, the government is also trying to pitch for more international events to come to Singapore, whether it's in sports or in other form of tourism sector, like MICE, arts and culture, so on and so forth.
So would you say your jump from 9 to 50 plus million in 1 year was because of more of these events and the D&B that you did? Or was it because you did more within the existing events that you were already on?
I think both, yeah. Definitely some in D&B. Some is actually an expansion of our ability, right? Still within the sports space, but from sports delivery actually to sports infrastructure.
So I'll move on to the last difficult question. The third issue is key person dependence, right? Your success appears very closely tied to a team of founders and a very small senior team. So the first question is, if capable people step back, then what kind of institutional capabilities will remain in your company that is transferable and scalable? I'll give a more direct example of that. There apparently seems to be a reliance on personal guarantees from the founder and key executives for credit facilities and performance bonds, right? So after the listing, can your business stand fully on its own balance sheet without that support?
Yeah, and if you can elaborate a little bit on the financing situation, that would be helpful.
Okay, so again, my promise is that the founders of the company, right, myself, Mr. Koh, Clement and Adrian, right, we will continue to stay and build the company. Yeah, so that is the assurance that we want to give all investors. It's very important. But I also want to let actually everybody know, right, like for us to even go out on IPO shows that we have actually got very robust processes in-house. And that process is going to take care of a lot of things. Yeah, on top of that, over the years, right, we actually have built up a very strong middle management bench, right, that is taking on the role even without us interfering. I can come down and talk to you all maybe, from now until lunch. I'm not worried because operation is still being carried out. And then, of course, post-IPO, right, we are intending, in fact, we have already onboarded some to build the senior management bench as well as we continue our pivot into the wider space of event tourism. Yeah, so hopefully that answered the first question. Then second question is actually on the bank guarantees and stuff, right? Actually, we are very, very, fundamentally, we're actually very well capitalized. Okay, I think as of September last year, right, we have about 2.4 million cash. We have a couple of other assets which probably I wouldn't disclose, but ample money down there. And we also got a credit line of 7.2 million from our bank. Yeah, so anytime we need, we can actually utilize it. So this is all pre-IPO. We don't really have any stress in terms of cash flow. Of course, as we go out, right, if there's a need for further financing, we will then have to start to build on the credit worthiness of the company, and then we can continue to tap the capital market, either through, whatever method out there, or even getting a bank loan, right, without relying so much on personal guarantees.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would say that having a personal guarantee is not necessarily a bad thing, because that means that if the company goes under, they are
They
also
go under.
right?
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game.
So
Right,
it's,
yeah.
it's even more, they need it to succeed more than any other investor does. Otherwise, you got no more house to stay in.
Yeah, so the question is that will the personal guarantees disappear to be replaced by simply a loan with a higher interest rate but tied to the company instead of the individual?
Usually it's not like that. So once they set the interest rate, right, the interest rate is there to stay. But of course, to be fair, right, we will be the majority shareholder despite the listing, right. We're only diluting about 30% between pre-I and IPO tranche. So we are still 70%. So it may not be fair for 70% of the shareholder to take on 100% of the guarantee. So we'll apply to the bank to see whether we can take away the personal guarantee and then issue a corporate guarantee instead. Yeah, but nothing changes. The interest rate remains the same.
Okay, fair. Can you give me a bit of color? Because as you kind of step up on the projects get bigger and bigger, more and more exciting.
That's only because Singapore is growing bigger and bigger.
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, right? 很好, right? But I would like to have a bit of color on this, like your financing terms and, like what is a fair cost of capital, essentially, to keep running this thing, so that when you grow, you make sure that you're financially disciplined and that whole bit, that will be helpful, because you're essentially moving into bigger projects that have much longer arrangements.
So I think I shared earlier about the fundamentals, the financial fundamentals of Kin. Yeah, we have $7.2 million worth of line. We've not touched them. It's just on standby. We have 2.4 million cash. These are not built overnight. This is actually through discipline, right, where we have already instilled in ourselves the very first day since inception. We don't play around with business. Business is very important to us. Doing the right thing is very important. Yeah. So I don't think that there will be a problem moving forward, because that is already in our DNA, right? How we operate the business with integrity, of course.
And actually, just on that financing bit, right? Are these kind of facilities for, let's say, a performance bond? So you need to give a deposit and there's a performance guarantee. That's why you need a credit line like that? Or is it a bit of borrowing to buy something and then grow? Because that's very different, right? If you are borrowing to buy another business, then there's an interest element to that, and that's a cost. If you are just a performance bond, then you only pay when the bond is called upon. So if you perform, there's actually no cost to you, or there's a bit of a cost in maintaining it. But
so I think it's a mixture of everything. There are some projects that call for performance bond. So for example, you have a big project, they want you to issue performance bond first, right? And then you just issue one, and that's it. It got nothing to do with loan. It got nothing to do with having to get credit from the bank or anything.
So the
like that.
7.2 is not the performance bond facilities. No.
It's
Okay.
actually a credit line. So to answer that, and also I think there's also another question about, like you mentioned M&A, right? Yeah, whether we're going to take loan to do M&A. I think that one is a very strategic question. So there's a reason why we go IPO. In the prospectus, it's stated very clearly that we're going to use 90% of the proceeds for M&A.
M&A, yeah.
Yeah, so if 90% of the proceeds is going to go for M&A exercise, right? Of course, we exercise very stringent financial discipline before we utilize the fund. Then we will not be tapping into the credit line for the M&A. But then I don't want to discount things. Right? I must always keep the window open.
Oh, sorry, I from an investor perspective, I'm disappointed, right? Because in a sense, it's not that leverage is bad. There is a certain level of optimal
Yes,
leverage.
correct. Yes.
So if you're telling me, actually, you know what, I want to buy a business, but I only have 2 million in cash.
I haven't finished.
You
jumped
in
before. So M&A got this nature. It depends on the target they're acquiring. If you're acquiring a target that is young and didn't have a proven concept but would need some time to grow, right? You need to buy them perhaps using the IPO proceed because then there is no interest cost. But if you're buying a very mature company that, for example, in the space of mines, right, which actually we're intending to go into, that business itself is already cash flow positive. It's generating maybe $1-2 million, right? That you can get bank finance because then the cash flow is used to pay off. Yeah. So like I say, depending on the M&A, we'll do it differently.
Fair. And I think
It's safe.
Planning.
good. Yeah. No, and I think I know who you are exploring in that category.
This guy knows everything.
There are a few players in the game on sale. Oh yeah.
Haven't acquired, haven't said yet.
Yeah, haven't
Haven't
acquired.
acquired,
cannot
haven't
say
said
it.
yet.
Cannot say it. But
Wait. Before we go to
okay.
M&A and grow, because I know
Yeah,
you have some
yes,
questions
yes,
there.
I want to ask
Okay,
about
so
the
wait, that
IPs.
is on the right side of the chart because that determines how the company's future will be like. I want to look a bit more on the left first, so our listeners and viewers can figure out whether they feel reassured that the narrative on the right side will happen. Okay, so let's look at back, right? You've been around for quite some time and you guys came out from a giant. When the world was undergoing very difficult times, and that inevitably affected the sports events back then, as well as tourism, how did your company and operation team survive through that? And what was the cash flow like during those periods?
Okay. So when people ask questions like this, right, sometimes I feel it's not be localized like looking at one company. Because when COVID came, right, I think you must mention about COVID, a lot of business went under. And that was a market-wide phenomenon, right, that has to be addressed. That's why the government unlocked the war chest. They pump in the money, right? There was JSS, right? Everybody, get a pay cut, but at least have a job. The livelihood of people was saved. During the times of COVID in Singapore, actually, we were considered one of the frontliners. Yeah, we put our team in the harm's way, right? I'm sorry I had to do it, but it was for greater call, right? We built about 5,000 beds in Singapore to actually house the foreign workers. Yeah.
So that was your pivot.
Yeah, that was a very sudden pivot and we were given no time to react. I remember those days, right, when we had to do it. They go without sleep for like 3 days, 4 days to make sure that we can make sure people are safe.
Thank you for your contribution to our nation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay. Now my turn. Yes, I want to ask all the IP stuff, right? I mean, I understand the company now, it's pretty much a project management company, right? So the multiplier is as such, right? But you want to do the big business of owning an IP, then your multipliers will fly, right? I mean, that's a sexy part of this business, okay, which is essentially to be able to own the rights to then sell to the publisher, to then sell to distributors, then all those things, right? But that is a whole different ball game, right? So and you've established that you guys are exploring the path of M&As, right? So not gonna build organically internally. So maybe can you shed some light on like where are you looking at? What do you want to invest in? What type of IPs are you buying? Because there are a few things here, right? Whether it's sports, non-sports, or I don't know, esports. I don't know where you're going with this. So just give us some color, like where are you targeting your IP acquisitions? And how does it look like? Yeah.
So this one I can share quite a bit because we have actually invested in actually a attraction at Gardens by the Bay. It's called IMBA. So IMBA is actually a immersive experience attraction, and that basically has got 2 black boxes. and then one gallery lah. So that's our pivot into our arts and cultural space. That business is very interesting. That business work with a lot of international renowned artists, right, to create immersive experiences that they don't have. So those experiences then can be exported out to the rest of the world. So that's just one foray that we are going into. Another IP that we are...
Before we go back to the IP, so for this M&A portion, I think for longer term investors who have been part of companies where they go on to do M&A with IPO proceeds, one common problem is number
Sounds
one.
personal.
No, I'm saying that, I think Chris, you have seen a lot of
I say
this,
you
right?
personally investing in something like that.
Anyone with experience would have encountered.
You know,
but
you know. Yes,
I
yes.
also come
Yes,
from personal
yes, yes,
experience. So
yes.
there are two concerns that usually come up. Number one, how do you ensure that you never overpay? Number two, then how do you integrate so that after the acquisition, it is still very much synergized with your broader business? Can you shed some light in that without going too much into detail of your due diligence process?
So M&A sometimes in broader context, right, is like if you're a company, you operate from A to Z, and then you realize that, hey, actually you don't have C. So you buy a C come in, right? Then you have to integrate the C into your A to Z. So sometimes you do have problem. But for us, our M&A right, actually is a separate pillar that run by itself. So I don't see there's any integration risk. The only integration that will happen is actually at the very top, which is all the HR and all the accounts, right? Because you need to do reporting. So that's the part that needs some gelling, but it's not a big part. Operation-wise will not be challenged.
So you will be letting the existing operations team continue to run as it is.
Correct.
Okay, then how about the overpaying? What is your key metric to make sure that you never overpay for the businesses that you're looking to acquire?
So I guess that's a subject of negotiation, right? In the first place, there's always a market price for all the industries that you are entering into. You have to benchmark. Correct? You benchmark, then you make sure that you're not overpaying. So that's one thing. And then actually, I found out, after doing business for so long, right, is never be desperate. There's always another deal on the table. And you are not going to tell me, say, wow, I'm the best. Yeah, so that is a lot of self-discipline, a lot of control.
Okay, so does that mean you are also, in other words, saying that if the deal is too expensive, even if you guys really want that company, you're totally prepared to walk away and just find the next target?
We are prepared to. Yeah, we are prepared to do what we have to do for the benefit of all the shareholders.
Okay. Thank you. That's from me. Okay, back to your IP.
That's great. Maybe please give me more color on like the IP development, because all these are like other operational businesses, right? Which is great. Not saying that it's bad, but I want to see if you already have some thoughts around like which IP you're going to develop. Give us some direction.
Yeah, so I shared two earlier, right? So I talk about IMBA, attraction that's into arts and culture at Gardens by the Bay. I also talk about the entertainment venue. Yeah, the few other IPs that we intend to create is actually in the space of sports where we are very familiar with. I think there's a growing traction, right, out there, and a lot more support, a lot more interest coming in. So that is definitely one area that we'll look at. But in the wider space of event tourism, right, we are looking at creating events or tourism or events tourism concept, right, that is incubated in Singapore, but can be traveled around the world.
You're listening at a good time because now at this point of your financial history, as well as your growth projections and what you're looking to achieve, and together with the broader context of the AI scare trade happening around the world, your business sits in that very nice spot where it is AI proof. But can you share a little bit more about maybe how are you using AI to reduce your costs or make you more efficient or potentially improve your growth and exponentially grow that later on? What is your integration of AI into the business?
Okay, the answers to this interview, right, part of it is generated by AI. So
That's a good answer.
yeah, I mean,
Only a part. I thought.
Only a part. Yes,
You're busy running the actual business. This is just a side thing,
no,
generating
because
AI.
IPO, right, a lot of things you have to
a
do.
lot of
So
stuff, yes.
must take shortcut where you can. Of course, I never use, truthfully 100% of what they say. I add in a lot of my stuff. But we do use AI. We do use AI in the office. So for example, like note taking is one of them. And then of course, the design process has been shortened significantly because of AI. Yeah. And then the proposal writing, things like this, right, are also using AI. But we're not dependent on AI. In fact, we are the opposite of the online world. We are the offline world. We are increasingly getting a lot of focus. If you realize in certain more developed countries, right, they are preventing the use of social media for people under 16, right? Yeah. And I think more countries will follow suit. tests has shown that, too much online browsing, right, is actually very detrimental to a person's, be it physical health or mental health. There's actually a lot of push to go into the experience economy. That means getting people to go out there, experience different things, touch the surface, touch grass.
That's why your business AI proof, ma.
Yeah, correct. Sorry. Yeah. So actually we are in the space of, you just got it. Yeah. So we're in the space of experience economy, right? Creating experience that is offline, and then hopefully, more and more people will come out. I
But
think
that's good to know, because what you're saying is, even though your business is AI proof, you're not just using AI to increase your productivity on the administrative part, the back office work. You're also using it to shorten the time needed for your creative process and thinking, because by using what you guys have already done, you make that process a bit faster with AI. Am I hearing that right?
Correct. I think we are all now like students right now in the age of AI, right? There's always something new coming out. Claude lah, then there's Nano Banana. I now become student. Last time I used to tell myself, this is how you do it. Now they turn around, they say, this is how you do it. Like, okay. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Yeah, we are always learning.
Yeah, but thank you for answering this, because I think it demonstrates for a lot of investors, they're concerned, number one, how good is the management team? Can they pivot well? How do they adapt to broader structural trends, things that are out of their control? And you have demonstrated that in today's answers when we asked you a bit some not so easy
Really
questions. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
and
thank
also
you.
this question on AI is really more of not so much knowing what you do with AI, but how your team and your company views this ever-changing landscape of AI. And are you even bothering to integrate? Because some may be like, no lah, my business is super AI-proof, don't need. And they refuse to integrate. But you saying that you are starting to integrate, that's interesting. Yeah, and it does give some reassurance to people listening in.
One last question
Yes.
about,
Okay,
about
yeah, he
multiples, is it?
Yes.
I was about to go there. Yeah.
What is the trailing price to earnings ratio of this IPO?
So trailing 12 months, we are trading at about 8.8.
Okay.
Not going to ask about dividends.
You're not going to ask about dividend.
Would you have a glide path towards dividends?
We don't have a strict dividend policy, but we have already shown in the prospectus that we'll be distributing a dividend of not lesser than 20% from our 2025 earning, and then 30% for 2026.
Okay, very generous.
So 207 is 10% more also?
Again, you see, we are business people. We know how to take care of shareholders. Given that if I give you the money, right, but there's a really compelling IPO opportunity, right, then I say, sorry, this year, I might as well build something and then you get more to gain. Right,
Of course.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking, right? You're raising money, you're going out to buy things.
You're trying to grow.
And then you give money back to shareholders.
I don't really want the dividend. At this point in time, I think growth companies should focus on growing. Right. Unless you're exiting at a different.
I mean, in Singapore,
place, but you're in Singapore. That's a reality. We know you love it. So
Chris loves it.
Chris loves
That's
it. He
why
built a whole
you are-
platform around it. There are a lot of people looking at this thing. So yes, thank you for the question. Thank you for answering. Any last comments? Anything you want to share with the community?
For us, our mandate is very simple. We are here because we want to build a thriving city, right? And the opportunity is right for us. The city will continue to grow. I think event tourism is a very important part of the whole economy in Singapore. I always like to think this and say this, right? I say when you have a good event, you feel a stadium. But when you have a great event, you actually feel the entire city. So the city come alive. So that's our mandate also. I'm keen to continue to, make the city interesting. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very fun. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode of the IPO Circle. Check out Kin Global. They're going for listing on the 23rd of April. We'll probably put a link to all the different content that you need to read, before you make your own decision. So with that, that's all for today. We'll see you at another episode of the IPO Circle. Meanwhile, take care. Bye-bye.